Have you ever looked at someone and felt like you were staring at yourself? But they're a stranger, right? What if a moment like that changed your life forever? This is a story about Alex Kingston. He wasn't just any CEO, he was known everywhere. His face was on magazine covers. People quoted him as if he were a rock star. He drove expensive cars, stayed in the best hotels, and made more money than he could ever spend. But behind all the success, there was something missing. Alex had built his company from nothing. No help, no rich parents, just hard work, long nights, and big dreams. He believed in staying focused. No distractions, no time for looking back. But sometimes, the past doesn't stay in the past. Sometimes it comes knocking when you least expect it. One Thursday afternoon, Alex was at the airport. He had a flight to catch, but a storm rolled in and all planes were delayed. Normally, he'd go back to his office and keep working. But that day felt different. He had this strange feeling in his chest, like something was calling him. So, instead of heading to his glass tower downtown, he told his driver to take him somewhere else. "Take me back to my old neighborhood," he said. His driver raised an eyebrow. That wasn't something Alex ever did. But he nodded and drove. As the car moved through the streets, Alex looked out the window. The city had changed. But this part of town hadn't changed much. The buildings were smaller, the roads narrower. Kids played on the sidewalks. People walked slowly, smiling at each other. It was the kind of place where time moved differently. And suddenly, Alex felt like a different person. He asked the driver to stop near a small cafe. He used to go there when he was in college. It looked almost the same. Old wooden chairs, small tables, and the smell of fresh coffee in the air. He walked in, ordered a black coffee, and sat by the window. That's when it happened. A group of schoolchildren ran past the window. They were laughing, jumping over puddles, their bags bouncing on their backs. But one boy made Alex sit up straight. He wasn't sure why, but something about the boy caught his eye. The boy turned to laugh at something his friend said. At that moment, Alex felt his heart stop. That smile. Those eyes. The way he pushed his hair away from his face. It was like looking into a mirror from the past. The boy looked just like him when he was that age. Alex blinked, thinking maybe it was just his mind playing tricks. But the more he looked, the more he knew. This wasn't just a random child. The boy ran up to a woman standing nearby. She looked tired, like someone who had worked too hard for too long. But her face was soft, familiar. When Alex saw her smile at the boy and placed a gentle hand on his back, it all came rushing back. Her name was Maya. More than 10 years ago, before Alex became the man everyone knew, Maya was his world. She believed in him when he was just a broke college student with dreams bigger than his wallet. They talked for hours, made plans, laughed, loved. However, one day, Alex got a call from an investor who wanted to fund his idea. It was his big break. And in chasing that dream, he left. No goodbye. No explanation. He just disappeared. And now, standing just outside that little cafe, was Maya, with a boy who looked exactly like him. Alex felt his chest tighten. He couldn't breathe. Could it really be true? He kept watching. He didn't move. He just stared, trying to make sense of it all. Why didn't she tell me? Is that my son? How could I not know? The boy turned again, and there it was. That same grin, the same sparkle in his eyes. Alex felt like the world had stopped moving. He wanted to run out, to say something, anything. But he didn't. He sat there frozen, trapped between fear and guilt. He thought about all the birthdays he missed, the first steps, the first words, school plays, bedtime stories, laughter, tears. He had missed it all, and now he wasn't sure if he had the right to even say hello. He stood up, ready to go after them. but his feet wouldn't move. For a man who made billion-dollar decisions every day, this was something he didn't know how to handle. He watched Maya and the boy walk away, disappearing down the street. And for the first time in years, Alex didn't feel powerful. He didn't feel smart. He felt small, lost. He got back in his car, silent. He didn't say a word. His driver asked, "Back to the office, sir?" Alex nodded slowly, but his mind was still back at that cafe, staring at a boy who might be his son, a boy who didn't even know he existed. That day changed something in Alex. He didn't have the answers yet. But one thing was clear. Life had given him everything, except the one thing that might matter the most. He had just seen his own reflection, not in a mirror but in the eyes of a child, and that reflection? It wouldn't go away. Tell me in the comments, where are you watching from? Your comment might be the one I pin at the top. So whether it's something deep, funny, or just your thoughts on the story, I'm reading them all. Want to continue the story? Let me know. Part 2 is coming soon. Alex Kingston was the kind of man people noticed. He walked into a room and heads turned. His suits were always sharp, his watch was worth more than most people's cars, and his name often appeared in business magazines. He wasn't just successful, he was the symbol of success. CEOs wanted to be like him. Young entrepreneurs followed his every move, and his company was one of the biggest in the country. On the outside, Alex had everything: money, fame, and power. But things weren't always like this. Alex grew up in a small neighborhood, the kind where people worked long hours for little pay. His father left when he was young, and his mother worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. As a kid, he wore hand-me-down clothes and learned early that nothing in life came easy. He studied hard, worked part-time jobs, and always believed he was meant for something bigger. People around him doubted him. They said dreams like his didn't come true for kids from their side of town. But Alex didn't listen. He used every no he ever heard as fuel. When he finally got into college, he was the first in his family to do so. While others partied, Alex spent nights in the library or working on small business ideas. He failed more times than he could count, but he never gave up. Every failure pushed him to try harder. Eventually, he came up with a tech idea that caught the attention of a small investor. That idea became the start of his company and his journey to the top. Over the years, Alex's company grew fast. He became a millionaire, then a billionaire. He opened offices across the world, hired thousands of people, and turned his name into a brand. But as the money rolled in and the awards piled up, Alex became more focused on business than anything else. He didn't make time for friendships. Relationships came and went, family events. He skipped most of them. To him, success meant staying focused. No distractions, no looking back. He lived in a high-rise apartment, drove luxury cars, and stayed in 5-star hotels. But no matter how much he achieved, there was something inside him that always felt quiet. Not sad, not broken, just quiet. He ignored it, buried it under meetings, emails, and new goals. There was always another deal to close, another milestone to reach. People admired him for his discipline. They called him smart, fearless, unstoppable. And maybe he was all those things. But they didn't see the part of him that never paused. The part that never stopped asking, is there more to life than this? Because deep inside, Alex never really gave himself time to reflect. He had left parts of his past behind, people, places, even memories that didn't fit into the perfect picture of his success. To him, looking back meant losing focus. And losing focus wasn't an option. But sometimes, life has a strange way of reminding us of the things we try to forget. It was a Thursday afternoon when Alex found himself stuck at the airport. A storm had rolled in unexpectedly, grounding all flights. He was supposed to be heading back to his office to meetings that could make or break the next quarter. But As the storm raged outside, his flight was delayed by hours. It was the kind of situation that would frustrate anyone else, but for Alex, it was just another hiccup in a life full of them. Instead of sitting at the terminal, staring at his phone, or pacing the halls, Alex decided to take a detour. He was never one to waste time, but this felt different. There was something about the rain, something about the gray skies, that made him want to do something unexpected. He had lived in the fast lane for so long, but now, in this rare moment of downtime, it felt like the universe was nudging him to slow down. So he rented a car and headed toward the last place he ever thought he'd go again, his old neighborhood. It was a part of his life he had long buried, like an old photo album tucked away in the attic. He hadn't been back in years, not since he'd left for college, then moved to bigger cities for work. The roads were still the same, but somehow they felt smaller, more intimate than he remembered. The air smelled different, too, more real, less manufactured. It was the kind of place where everyone knew each other's names and the rhythm of life was slower. As he drove through the familiar streets, Alex felt a strange mix of emotions. Nostalgia washed over him, and for a moment he almost felt like he was back in his younger self's shoes before the fame and fortune. He remembered the times he and his friends would hang out on these very sidewalks, laughing and joking with no care in the world. Back then, all he wanted was a shot at something bigger. Now that he had it, he couldn't help but wonder if he'd left too much behind. He parked the car near a small cafe, one he used to visit during his college days. The place hadn't changed much. Still the same weathered tables outside, the same sign that had seen better days. The scent of fresh pastries mixed with the aroma of coffee in the air. It was a cozy little spot, always filled with people, students studying, locals chatting, and the occasional artist sketching the view. Alex stepped out of the car, the rain, lightly tapping on the roof, and walked inside. The bell above the door jingled as he entered, and the warm, familiar feeling hit him immediately. The barista behind the counter gave him a quick, friendly smile, though he probably didn't recognize him. To them, Alex Kingston was just another guy, but to him, it felt like time had come to a standstill. It was almost as if he had never left. He ordered a simple black coffee and found a seat by the window, his eyes drifting toward the street outside. He took a sip, the bitterness grounding him, bringing him back to a time when life was simpler, before boardrooms and stock reports, before the endless cycle of meetings and decisions, the kind of life that made him feel like he was constantly chasing something, never really reaching it. But in that small, quiet cafe, it didn't matter. The world outside seemed distant, as if everything was muted by the steady rhythm of the rain and the warmth inside. Alex sat there for what felt like hours, lost in thought. Maybe it was the storm, or maybe it was the comfort of the place, but for the first time in a long while, he didn't think about work. He didn't think about the next deal or the next project. He just sat there and remembered. He thought he was just killing time. That's all it was, one small detour in a busy day. But then, as his gaze drifted outside, something caught his eye. The world outside was still, almost frozen, save for a small group of children running past the cafe. Their laughter echoed in the quiet street, the sound of their carefree energy, cutting through the dullness of the rainy afternoon. But there was one boy in particular who caught Alex's attention. He wasn't anything special at first glance, just another child, laughing and chasing after his friends. But then, something stopped Alex in his tracks. It wasn't the boy's clothes, or his messy hair, or even the way he ran. It was his face. For some reason, the boy looked familiar, but not in a, he reminds me of someone way. No, this was different. This was more like looking at himself, or at least a younger version of himself. The boy stopped for a moment, turned, and smiled at something one of his friends said. It wasn't just the smile, though. It was the eyes. The way he tilted his head, the small movement of his hands brushing his hair away from his face. It was all so familiar, so much like Alex when he was that age. A sudden chill ran through Alex. It was a strange feeling, one that made his heart beat just a little faster. He shook his head, thinking it was just a coincidence. Kids often looked alike, right? But as he watched the boy walk away, something didn't sit right with him. The boy ran over to a woman waiting nearby. She looked up and smiled warmly at him, her tired eyes softening as she greeted him. Alex recognized her too. It was Maya. His breath caught in his chest. Maya. A name from his past, a person he had left behind years ago. But now, seeing her again, everything came rushing back. The rain had started to fall harder now, but the kids didn't seem to care. They ran through the streets, splashing in puddles, their laughter echoing through the air. The sound was light and carefree, the kind of happiness that only comes when you're young, unburdened by the weight of the world. Alex watched them for a while, his mind wandering. For a brief moment, he wished he could go back to a time when life was that simple, before the pressure, before the endless meetings and decisions. But his thoughts were interrupted when one particular boy caught his eye. He stood out among the group, not because he was doing anything extraordinary, but because he looked like he didn't belong in the chaos of the others. The boy was just standing there for a moment, watching his friends, a quiet presence in the midst of the playful noise. Then, as if on cue, he grinned at something one of his friends had said. Alex froze. It wasn't just the smile. No, it was more than that. The boy's eyes were wide and curious, much like Alex remembered his own being when he was that age. And the smile. Alex could almost swear it was his own smile, the way it curled at the corner of his lips, half mischievous, half shy. The same smile he used to wear as a child. But it wasn't just that. It was the way the boy flicked his hair out of his eyes, the way his hand moved so naturally, with the same slight motion Alex himself used to do when he was younger. The way he brushed it back, like it was second nature, like a part of him that he couldn't even control. It was uncanny. For a moment, Alex couldn't breathe. He blinked several times, trying to shake off the strange feeling that was creeping into his chest. There was no way. It couldn't be. It was just a coincidence, right? But then the boy turned and looked at him. Their eyes locked for just a second, and Alex felt his heart race. The boy's expression was innocent, unknowing, like any other kid. But in that fleeting glance, Alex felt something stir inside him. Something deep. Something that hadn't been touched in years. It was as if the past had reached out and grabbed him, pulling him back to a time he had long since buried. He couldn't take his eyes off the boy. Everything about him, his face, his mannerisms, was a reflection of someone Alex had left behind. It was as if he was looking at a younger version of himself. The boy laughed again, the sound light and carefree, and turned back toward his friends. But Alex couldn't look away. He didn't know why, but something inside him told him to keep watching, to keep seeing if there was more. Something told him that this wasn't just some random child who happened to look like him. There was something more to this moment, something he couldn't quite put his finger on. As the boy jogged back to the others, Alex's gaze shifted, and that's when he saw her. Maya. His stomach churned. His heart skipped a beat. There she was, standing a few feet away, looking at the boy, with the same softness in her eyes, the same familiar tenderness that Alex had once seen in her when they were together, when they had dreamed of a future that never came. Maya hadn't seen him yet, but Alex couldn't take his eyes off her. He remembered the way her voice sounded, the way she laughed at the smallest things, the way she would care for him when life got tough. But now, looking at her, all he could feel was a mix of confusion and guilt. She looked older now, worn, maybe from years of living without him, but still the same Maya, the one who had always believed in him when no one else did. Alex felt a wave of emotions hit him. How many years had passed since he last saw her? More than a decade? Yet seeing her again, it felt like nothing had changed. She was standing there, just like before, but only now was she not alone. She had the boy with her. Alex's mind raced. The boy. Was he? No. It couldn't be. Could it? The questions flooded in faster than he could keep up. How many birthdays had he missed? Was the boy his? Had Maya kept him a secret all these years? And why hadn't she reached out? He could feel, his heart pounding in his chest, a heavy mix of emotions twisting inside him. He wanted to approach them to find out the truth. But something held him back. Fear? Guilt? Maybe both. He just stood there, frozen, watching as Maya and the boy walked away, disappearing into the misty rain. Every step they took felt like a step further into the past, a past Alex had thought he'd left behind. But as they walked away, the questions didn't stop. They lingered, nagging at him, pulling him in every direction. Was the boy really his son? What had happened to Maya after he left? How could he have missed something so important? He didn't know the answers, not yet. But one thing was clear. He couldn't walk away from this. He couldn't ignore the truth any longer. And for the first time in a long time, Alex didn't feel like the powerful CEO. He didn't feel like the man who had it all. He felt small, vulnerable, and completely unprepared for what was coming next. The boy wasn't alone, and that's when the past walked right back into his life. Alex sat in the cafe, his coffee forgotten in front of him as the rain outside began to pick up. His mind was in turmoil. Maya. The name alone carried so much weight, so much history. He hadn't thought about her in years, not really. His life had been consumed by business, by climbing higher, by making deals that would solidify his place in the world. But now, as he sat there in that small cafe, looking out into the rain-soaked streets, she had resurfaced. Maya had always been different. When they first met, Alex was still in college, struggling, unsure of his future. He didn't come from money. He didn't have connections. All he had was an unrelenting drive to succeed and the hope that it would someday pay off. Back then, he wasn't the powerful CEO he was now. He was just a young man with big dreams and not enough resources to make them happen. But Maya saw something in him that no one else did. She believed in him. She was the one who stayed up late with him, listening to his plans, his visions of a future filled with success. When he doubted himself, when the weight of failure seemed too heavy, Maya was there, supporting him without question. She didn't care that he didn't have the right clothes or the fancy job title. She believed in him because of who he was, not what he had. Their relationship was simple but meaningful. They spent their days talking about everything and nothing, about the future, about what they wanted from life. It wasn't always easy, especially for Alex. He had dreams, big ones, but he didn't have the resources to match them. Maya knew that. She knew the struggles he faced. But she was always there, cheering him on, telling him that he could do it, that they could do it together. But Alex had always been restless. He wanted more. He wanted success, and he wanted it now. When he got his first big break, a call from an investor who saw potential in his idea, he saw his chance. He could finally take control of his life. He could chase the dream he had worked so hard for. But in his excitement, in his rush to seize the opportunity, he made a decision that would haunt him for years to come. He left Maya behind. It wasn't a dramatic goodbye. There were no tears, no big speeches. Alex just walked away. He told her he had to go, that this was his shot, and that he couldn't afford to waste it. But in doing so, he closed the door on the one person who had believed in him when no one else did, and he never looked back. At first, it felt easy. The hustle, the Meetings, the constant climb to the top, the thrill of closing deals, of building his empire. It was addictive. He told himself that it was all worth it. He told himself that he was doing it for both of them. He would make it big, and one day, he would go back for her. But as the years passed, Maya faded into the background. The calls stopped. The memories grew distant. Alex buried his past beneath layers of success, convincing himself that he had made the right choice. After all, he had everything now, the money, the power, the fame. But now, as he sat in that cafe, staring out the window at the rain-soaked street, it all came rushing back. He hadn't thought about Maya in so long, not in any meaningful way. But seeing her again, standing there with the boy who looked so much like him, it felt like a punch to the gut. She hadn't changed much. Not really. She was older, yes. But there was still that softness in her eyes, that warmth that Alex remembered so well. It wasn't the same warmth he saw in the faces of the people he surrounded himself with now. No, this was different. This was real, and it made his heart ache in ways he wasn't prepared for. But it wasn't just Maya that stopped him in his tracks. It was the boy who looked like a reflection of his younger self. He had his eyes, his smile, and his way of brushing his hair back. There was no denying it. The boy was his son. The realization hit him like a ton of bricks. How had he not known? How had he missed this all these years? The questions flooded his mind, but the answers were just out of reach. He wanted to run after them, to confront Maya, to ask her everything that had been eating at him, but he didn't move. He couldn't. The past was too heavy, and the guilt too overwhelming. He had left her. He had walked away from her without even a second thought, chasing a dream that, in that moment, felt incredibly empty. Maya had been his everything once. She had believed in him when no one else did. She had loved him when he had nothing to offer. But he had chosen success over love. And now, standing in that cafe, watching her from a distance, he realized just how much he had lost. She had moved. She had built a life without him, and he was left with nothing but regret for choices he couldn't take back. But now there was a boy who looked just like him. Alex could no longer ignore the pull of the past. It was right there in front of him, and it was asking him to make a choice. He could keep running from the truth, pretending that everything he had achieved in his life was enough. Or he could confront the past, face the mistakes he had made, and finally find out who the boy really was. Maya was just a few meters away, and Alex knew deep down that the answers were within his reach. But whether he was ready to face them, to face her, that was another question altogether. For the first time in years, he didn't feel like the powerful CEO, the man who controlled everything. He felt small, uncertain, and scared. Scared of what he might find, and scared of what he had left behind. Alex sat there in the cafe, still staring out the window, unable to shake the image of Maya and the boy from his mind. His heart was racing, his thoughts in chaos. The boy, his son? He couldn't even begin to process it. It was too much, too fast. The questions swirled around his mind, each one more unsettling than the last. Was it really him? Was this boy the son he never knew he had? He tried to calm himself, to tell himself that it was impossible, that it was just a coincidence. But deep down, Alex knew that the resemblance was too strong to ignore. The eyes, the smile, the way. The boy brushed his hair off his forehead. It was all too familiar, too much like him. Alex could feel a heavy weight settling in his chest. It was guilt. It was regret. It was a realization that he had missed so much. How had he not known? How had he not even thought about the possibility? The years had slipped by so quickly, and now, here was this boy child who might be his. A part of him felt like he was drowning in all the emotions that flooded over him. He watched as Maya bent down to talk to the boy, her voice soft and gentle. Everything about their interaction screamed mother and son. There was no mistaking it. The way she touched his shoulder, the way she smiled at him, it was a bond that could not be faked. It was real. The boy wasn't just a stranger. He was a part of her life, a part of her world. And if he was a part of her world, then maybe, just maybe, he was a part of Alex's too. But what did that mean for him? What did that mean for the life he had built? Alex had spent so many years building his empire, chasing success, and leaving everything else behind. He had told himself that it was all worth it, that the sacrifices were necessary. But now, as he watched Maya interact with the boy, he wondered if it was worth it after all. His mind raced with questions. Was this boy really his? How old was he? Did he know who his father was? Did Maya ever think of telling him? Did she ever want him to know? And most importantly, why hadn't she reached out to him? Why had she kept this from him? The questions seemed endless, and with each one, Alex felt more and more overwhelmed. It wasn't just the questions that haunted him, it was the feeling of guilt. He had left her. He had left Maya when she had been nothing but supportive, when she had believed in him, when she had loved him. He had walked away without a second thought, chasing a dream of success that now seemed empty. He had abandoned her, and now he was looking at a child who might be his son. How could he have missed this? How could he have been so blind to everything that had happened? Alex's stomach churned as he watched the boy laugh and run off to join his friends. Maya's eyes followed him for a moment, and Alex saw the softness in her expression and the way she looked at him with such love. It hit him like a ton of bricks. He had no place in this life. He had no right to walk back into Maya's world after all this time, after all the hurt he had caused her. He could feel the guilt crushing him, suffocating him. It wasn't just about missing out on the boy's life. It was about everything. It was about abandoning the one person who had believed in him when no one else did. It was about walking away from the love he had once shared with Maya. And now, he was left with nothing but a shattered image of the future he had once imagined. But despite the overwhelming guilt, despite the confusion, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that he needed to know. He needed answers. He had to find out if this boy was really his. If he was, then there were years of missed birthdays, missed moments, that Alex would never get back. The thought of it made him feel even more lost. But he couldn't run from it. He couldn't turn away from the truth, no matter how painful it might be. He stood up, suddenly feeling restless. He had always been a man who prided himself on having a plan, on knowing exactly what to do. But right now, he had no plan. He had no idea what to do. He didn't know whether he should approach Maya, whether he should ask her about the boy, or whether he should just walk away and leave everything behind. Nothing made sense anymore. As he walked out of the cafe, the weight of the decision pressing down on him, Alex's mind was a whirlwind. He had never been so unsure of himself. His whole life had been about control. Control over his career, control over his future, control over his image. But now, standing on the edge of something he hadn't expected, something he had never planned. For he felt completely out of control. He didn't know what to do. He didn't know what to say. But one thing was clear. He couldn't ignore the truth anymore. He couldn't pretend that this boy wasn't part of his life. He couldn't pretend that Maya wasn't still part of his past. And he couldn't pretend that he didn't care. Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. The rain had slowed, but his mind was still racing. He knew he had to make a choice, but he had no idea what the right choice was. For the first time in years, he felt completely lost, and for the first time in a long time, he didn't have a plan. Alex sat in his car, the engine turned off, but the sound of the rain against the windows felt like a constant drumbeat in his head. He hadn't moved since leaving the cafe, still frozen in place, stuck between the past and the present. The weight of the situation pressed down on him, and for the first time in a long time, Alex felt completely overwhelmed. His mind raced, memories flooding back, uninvited and relentless. He remembered the early days with Maya. She had always been there, supporting him when everything seemed impossible. When no one else believed in him, Maya was the one who said he could do it, that he could build something great. She had believed in him more than he had ever believed in himself. And yet, he had left her. He had walked away from that love, from that trust, all for the pursuit of success. As the memories played in his mind, they were not filled with pride, but regret. Why didn't I stay? The question echoed over and over, sharp and painful. He had been so focused on his career, on becoming someone important, someone powerful. He had told himself that it would be worth it, that success would bring everything he ever wanted. But now, as he sat there watching the rain fall, it felt empty. The success, the wealth, the fame, it all felt hollow. His heart tightened as he thought of the boy, the one who could be his son. Alex didn't even know where to start with that. What if the boy wasn't his? What if he had built up this whole story in his mind, only to find out that it was nothing more than a fantasy? What if he was just another stranger to Maya, someone she had long since moved on from? What if they didn't want him in their lives? Fear gnawed at him. Fear of rejection. Fear that he was too late. Fear that Maya had built a life without him, a life that didn't need him. He could picture it clearly. The way she had moved on, the way she had raised the boy on her own, without ever asking for his help, without ever needing him. He had abandoned her, and now he was wondering if there was still a place for him. The panic inside him grew. It was as if his heart was trying to race ahead, but his mind couldn't keep up. His chest tightened, and for a moment he couldn't breathe. He had spent his life being in control, always knowing the right move to make, the right words to say. But now, he was lost. He didn't know what to do. What if they don't want me? The thought hung in the air, thick and suffocating. He didn't want to be rejected. He didn't want to walk up to them, only to be sent away. He had no idea how to even approach Maya, let alone the boy. Would she hate him for walking away all those years ago? Would she resent him for not being there when she needed him most? But there was another voice deep inside him, a voice that was harder to ignore, a voice that told him he had to face the truth, that he couldn't run from it forever. He looked out, the window at the rain, his mind replaying everything again. What had he really left behind? Was it just a love story? Was it just about a relationship that ended? Or was there more to it? Was there a child, his child, that he had never known? The thought of the boy stirred something deep inside him. The idea of missing out on his child's life, of never knowing the laughter, the growth, the moments that made a family. Those were the things that made Alex feel like he had failed. But he had been so focused on building his empire that he hadn't even realized what he was truly sacrificing. As the minutes passed, Alex wrestled with himself, torn between the past and the present. He had so many questions, so much guilt, so much fear, but none of it seemed to have a clear answer. What if Maya didn't want to revisit the past? What if she had healed and moved on without him? The guilt was overwhelming, but the fear was suffocating. He didn't know if he could take the rejection, if he could handle knowing that his past mistakes had pushed him too far away from the people he once loved. He leaned back in the seat, his hand gripping the steering wheel tightly. His breathing was shallow as he tried to calm himself, but it was no use. The more he thought about it, the more his mind spiraled into a whirlwind of confusion and regret. He had to know the truth. He couldn't keep living in this limbo. But How could he even begin to ask? How could he face Maya after all these years? After everything he had left behind? The rain began to lighten, the storm passing by. But the storm in Alex's mind raged on. He couldn't think straight. He couldn't figure out what to do next. His life had always been about making choices and taking risks, but this was different. This was not something he could control. He had always believed that time healed everything, but now he wasn't so sure. Time had passed, and so much had changed. He wasn't the same person he had been when he left Maya all those years ago. He was someone new, someone who had built an empire, but someone who had also lost his way. He wasn't sure who he was anymore, or if there was even a place for him in Maya's life. The panic rose again, but this time, Alex forced himself to take a deep breath. He couldn't keep running from the truth. He couldn't keep hiding from what was in front of him. No matter how scared he was, no matter how much guilt weighed on him, he knew he had to face the past. He stared at the cafe across the street, wondering if he should go inside. I wonder if he should approach Maya, or if he should just walk away. But in the silence of his car, Alex knew one thing for sure. He couldn't keep pretending like this didn't matter. The boy was his. He had to know. He had to find out, but first, he had to face Maya. And for the first time in years, Alex felt like he was standing on the edge of something bigger than himself. Something that was no longer about business, about success, about control. It was about family. It was about the love and the life he had walked away from. And now, he was ready to face the consequences. The days following the rainy afternoon were a blur for Alex. He couldn't shake the image of the boy from his mind. The way he looked, the way he moved, so much like him. He didn't know why, but he couldn't bring himself to walk up to them. It felt too soon, too intrusive. So instead, he kept his distance, quietly following them from afar. He watched without being seen, keeping to the shadows, observing their lives like a stranger who didn't belong. Every day, he saw them, Maya and the boy, living a simple life. They didn't have the luxury of the wealth Alex had accumulated over the years, but there was something undeniably genuine about their world. The boy, no older than 10, spent his afternoons playing soccer with friends in the small park near their apartment. His laughter was loud and full of life, and the way he moved on the field, quick, confident, reminded Alex so much of himself when he was young. The way the boy kicked the ball, his competitive spirit, the way his eyes lit up when he scored a goal. Alex couldn't help but feel a pang in his chest. Every time the boy laughed, it felt like a reminder of everything he had missed. Maya, on the other hand, worked long hours at a small cafe just down the street. It wasn't the glamorous job Alex had imagined for her, but she seemed content. He watched her as she served customers, always smiling, always kind. She had a quiet strength about her that Alex had always admired. She didn't seem to mind the work. It was a simple life, one that didn't require the stress of board meetings or multi-million-dollar deals. And yet, despite the simplicity of it all, there was something about their routine that seemed fulfilling. He would watch them just out of sight, and sometimes he found himself feeling envious. Envious of the closeness they shared, envious of the warmth between them. It was a life Alex had once thought was beneath him. When he was young and ambitious, he had dreamed of having it all. The money, the power, the influence. But now, as he observed their world from a distance, he realized that maybe the simple moments they shared were what he had been chasing all along. There were days when he saw them laughing together in the park or walking home hand in hand, and Alex would stand there, frozen, watching from the corner of the street. The boy would run ahead while Maya kept a gentle pace, her eyes following him with a look of unconditional love. Alex couldn't stop himself from imagining what it would have been like to be there, to be the one walking beside Maya, to be the one cheering the boy on at his soccer game. What would it have been like if he hadn't left? What if he had stayed and built a life with them? He could hear Maya's voice in his mind, the way she had called him out years ago, asking him why he was so focused on the future that he couldn't see the present. At the time, he had dismissed it. He thought she didn't understand. But now, watching them, he couldn't help but feel the sting of regret. Maya had always been right. She had seen something in him that he had missed. She had seen the value in the simple things, the laughter, the love, the moments that make up a life. But now, as Alex followed them from a distance, it felt like he was an outsider looking in. He wasn't a part of their world anymore. He was just a shadow lingering on the edges of their lives, too afraid to step forward and make himself known. Every evening he would retreat to his car, parked just a block away from their apartment. He would sit there, staring at their home, trying to convince himself that he wasn't making a mistake by watching from afar. He was afraid of what he might find out, afraid of how they might react if he suddenly appeared in their lives. Again, but the more he watched, the more he realized how much he had missed. It wasn't just the boy who looked like him, it was the way Maya still carried herself, the quiet determination in her eyes, the way she handled everything with grace. He had left her, and she had rebuilt her life without him. She had found happiness and a way to raise the boy on her own. Alex could never get that time back. He couldn't undo the years he had spent focused on his career, ignoring the people who truly mattered. One day, he watched from his car as Maya and the boy played in the park. The boy had kicked the soccer ball a little too far, and it rolled into the street. Without hesitation, the boy ran after it, looking back to see if his mother was watching. Maya, on the other hand, had her attention on something else, unaware of the approaching car. Alex's heart stopped as he watched the boy dart into the street. Without thinking, Alex jumped out of his car, running toward the boy, pushing him out of the way just as the car sped past. His breath was heavy as he stood over the boy, who was on the ground, shaking but unharmed. Maya was running toward them now, her face full of panic as she reached her son. When she saw Alex, her expression shifted. For a moment, there was confusion, then recognition. "Alex?" Her voice was soft, almost a whisper. The boy, still on the ground, looked up at Alex with wide eyes. He didn't say anything at first, but his gaze lingered as if trying to place him. Alex, heart racing, didn't know what to say. He had just risked everything to save the boy, but he didn't know how to explain why he had been watching them from a distance, why he had been following them. Maya helped the boy up, still staring at Alex. Her eyes softened, but there was a mix of emotions in her gaze: surprise, relief, and something else. Something Alex couldn't quite name. For a brief moment, time seemed to stand still. It felt like everything had led up to this one moment. Alex had been watching them for so long, from a distance, too afraid to step forward. But now, with the boy safe and Maya standing in front of him, it felt like fate had finally given him the chance he had been waiting for. But what would happen now? Was this his second chance, or had he already lost his place in their lives forever? Alex didn't know where to start. After the incident in the park, he had felt a rush of emotions. Relief that the boy was safe, confusion about what to do next, and more than anything, regret. Regret for everything he had missed, for the years he had wasted. He had been so consumed with building his empire that he had forgotten the most important things in life: love, family, and connection. But now, seeing them together, seeing the boy who could very well be his son, Alex realized that there was a chance to make things right. But how could he face Maya after all these years? How could he explain everything, the mistakes he had made, and the reason why he had disappeared from her life without a word? The guilt was heavy, and the fear of rejection was even heavier. But deep down, Alex knew he had to try. He had to take the first step, even if it was small, even if it meant making himself vulnerable. So, he did what he thought was best. He sat at his desk that night, staring at a blank sheet of paper. He had written so many emails, so many speeches, and business proposals over the years. But this was different. This was personal. This was about his heart. After a long pause, he finally picked up the pen and began to write. Maya, I don't know where to begin, but I have to start somewhere. I've thought about you every day since I left, and I've never stopped regretting it. The truth is, I was selfish. I chased something that I thought would make me happy. And in the process, I lost what truly mattered. I don't expect you to forgive me, and I don't deserve your forgiveness. But I've never stopped thinking about you, about the life we could have, had. I know I'm a stranger to you now, and I'm not asking you to trust me again. But I need you to know that I see you. I see the love you've given to the boy, and I want to be a part of his life, even if it's just a small part. If you're open to it, I'd love to talk. I don't expect anything from you, but I wanted you to know that I'm here. I'll be waiting for you to decide. With regret, Alex. He read the letter over and over again, unsure if it was enough, unsure if it was too much. The words seemed to lack everything he wanted to say, yet they were the only words he could offer. After a long moment of hesitation, Alex folded the letter and placed it in an envelope. He drove to Maya's neighborhood the next day, his heart pounding in his chest. As he parked in front of her house, a strange calmness washed over him. The house looked the same, though a little smaller than he remembered. The small yard was well kept, with flowers lining the edges of the driveway. It looked like a place full of love, a place where memories were made. Alex felt a pang of regret as he looked at the house. This was the life he had left behind, the life he had chosen to walk away from. He sat there for a while, his hand on the steering wheel, unable to move. His mind was racing, wondering what he was doing. Was he making a mistake? Would Maya even care? Would she want to see him again after all these years? But then, he remembered the boy who looked like him, the boy who might be his son. He couldn't just sit in his car and wonder forever. He had to do something. Alex took a deep breath and stepped out of the car. He walked up the driveway slowly, the letter clutched in his hand. His steps were heavy, each one carrying the weight of the years he had spent away from Maya and the boy. He stopped in front of the door, took one last look at the house, and then knocked. There was no answer. He waited for what felt like an eternity, but still, no one came. His heart sank. Maybe Maya wasn't home. Maybe he had missed his chance. Maybe he had already lost her. But then, a thought occurred to him. Instead of waiting around, he decided to leave the letter. He carefully slid it into the mailbox, his fingers trembling. He stood there for a moment, staring at the envelope, feeling the full weight of the decision he had just made. This was it. He had taken the first step. Alex turned around and walked away, his heart heavy but oddly hopeful. As he reached his car, he glanced back at the house once more. Would Maya read the letter? Would she even want to? The uncertainty was suffocating, but Alex knew that he had done what he could. He had taken the first step, and now it was in her hands. Maya, meanwhile, was on her way home from work when she saw the envelope in the mailbox. She recognized the handwriting immediately. Her heart skipped a beat. Alex's handwriting. Her fingers trembled as she picked it up, wondering what it could be. She hadn't heard from him in years. He had disappeared without a word, without an explanation, and now here he was, reaching out to her after all this time. As she opened the envelope, her mind was racing. She wasn't sure what to expect, but she wasn't prepared for the flood of emotions that hit her as she read his words. Shock, confusion, anger, but also a sense of longing. She had never forgotten Alex. Not really. There had always been a part of her that hoped he would come back, but she had learned to bury that hope deep down. Seeing his words now brought all of those feelings back, and it felt like a wave crashing over her. Maya sat down on the edge of the couch, the letter in her hands, her mind swirling. She didn't know what to do. Could she trust him again? Did she even want to? And what about the boy? Could Alex be a part of his life, or had he already missed his chance? The uncertainty was overwhelming, but Maya knew one thing. The decision would not be easy. The past had been painful, and reopening those wounds was terrifying. But sometimes even pain could lead to healing. She didn't know where this letter would lead, but for the first time in years, Maya felt a flicker of hope, and for Alex, that was all he needed to know. He had taken the first step, and now all he could do was wait. The phone rang, cutting through the quiet air in Alex's office. His heart skipped a beat when he saw the name Maya on the screen. He hadn't expected this call. After everything, after the years of silence, he hadn't thought she would reach out to him. But here it was, her name lighting up his phone, and he knew he couldn't ignore it. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. The moment he answered, he could already feel the weight of the conversation hanging in the air. "Alex," Maya's voice came through the line, her tone cold and guarded. "I got your letter." Alex's throat tightened, and for a second he couldn't find his words. "Maya, I didn't know how else to reach you," he said, his voice shaking just a little. "I just needed you to know that I'm here, and I never stopped thinking about you." There was a long pause, a silence that stretched on, for what felt like an eternity. Then, Maya spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "You never stopped thinking about me. You left me. You left us. Do you know how many years I spent wondering why you didn't come back? Why have you never called? You broke my heart, Alex. You broke everything." Her words hit him like a punch to the gut. He could feel the anger, the hurt, the betrayal in her voice, and it hurt him more than he had ever imagined it would. "I'm sorry," Alex said quietly, feeling the weight of her pain. "I was selfish. I was so focused on my career, on building something, that I didn't stop to think about what I was leaving behind. I thought I was doing the right thing, but I was wrong. I should have never left you. And now I see what I've missed." There was a sharp inhale from Maya's side. "Missed? You think it's just about what you've missed?" "It's not that simple, Alex. You can't just waltz back into our lives after all this time and expect things to be okay." "I don't expect anything, Maya," Alex replied softly, feeling the weight of his own guilt. "I just want a chance to make things right, to be part of his life." There was another long pause before Maya spoke again, her voice shaking. "He's your son, Alex. The boy you saw in the park. He's yours." The words hit him like a freight train. His heart stopped for a second, and for the first time in years, his mind went completely blank. The boy was his son? It felt surreal. This time, he had been living in a world where he thought he had missed out on everything, not knowing that he had already missed the most important part of his life. "Wait, what?" Alex stammered, struggling to find his voice. "Are you sure? How did this happen? Why didn't you tell me?" Maya let out a bitter laugh, but it sounded more like a sob. "You really don't get it, do you? You left me, Alex. You left me with nothing but a broken heart and the responsibility of raising your son alone. I couldn't do it. I couldn't raise him and tell him that his father just walked away without a second thought. I was angry. I was hurt. I didn't want him to grow up with a lie, but I didn't want him to feel abandoned either." Alex's chest tightened as he listened to her words. He could hear the pain in her voice, and he couldn't blame her. He had abandoned her. He had abandoned them both. I didn't know, Maya. I didn't know any of this," Alex said, his voice cracking with emotion. "I'm so sorry. I should have been there. I should have been a better man. But now that I know the truth, I want to make things right. I want to be there for him, for you. Please, just give me a chance. Maya's voice was trembling now. You think it's that easy? You think you can just walk in and be the hero? You're not a hero, Alex. You're the man who left us. You're the man who didn't care enough to even pick up the phone. You left me alone with a baby, alone with all the questions, all the pain. You didn't care then. Why would you care now? I do care, Maya, Alex whispered, his voice breaking. I've always cared. I was just too stupid to see it. I was too blind to see the most important thing in my life. But I want to change that. I want to be a part of his life. I want to be his father. Please. Maya was silent for a moment, and Alex could hear her breathing, slow and uneven. Finally, she spoke, her voice raw with emotion. He doesn't even know who you are, Alex. He's never known you. And I don't know if I can just throw him into something he's not ready for. He's been through enough. I've been through enough. Alex felt a cold wave of panic wash over him. He had missed so much of the boy's life, and now, not only did he have to face the fact that he had been absent, but he also had to face the truth that the boy didn't even know him. Maya was right. He had a long road ahead of him, and he didn't know if he could ever make up for the years he had lost. But he knew one thing for sure. He didn't want to be a memory. He didn't want to be someone who was just a shadow in their lives. I understand, Alex said quietly, his voice filled with pain. I know it's not going to be easy. And I'm not asking for you to forgive me right away. I'm asking for a chance to show you both that I'm here, that I'm not going anywhere. Please. Maya's voice softened just a little. I don't know, Alex. I don't know if I can trust you again. You broke my heart, and I don't know if I can risk doing that again. Alex closed his eyes, the weight of her words crashing down on him. He had no right to ask for forgiveness, no right to ask her to trust him again, but all he could do was hope. I hope that one day, maybe, they can rebuild what he had destroyed. I don't expect you to trust me, Maya, Alex said softly, but I will prove myself. I will show you that I'm here for you and for him, for the boy. I don't want to be just a memory. I want to be a part of his life, a part of yours. Please. There was a long silence before Maya spoke again, her voice quieter now, but still filled with uncertainty. I don't know what to say, Alex. I really don't. I'll give you time, Alex said gently. I'll wait, no matter how long it takes. The line went quiet for a moment before Maya spoke again, her voice soft. We'll see, Alex. We'll see. Alex hung up the phone, his heart full of hope, but also weighed down with the realization that this was just the beginning. There was so much to fix, so much to make right. But one thing was clear, he wasn't going to give up, not this time. He wasn't going to let the past define him anymore, and with that thought, Alex knew he had taken another step forward. Alex had spent days thinking about this moment, wondering how it would feel, what he would say, and how the boy would react. Now, standing on the threshold of Maya's small apartment, he was filled with an overwhelming mix of emotions. There was fear, excitement, guilt, and a strange sense of anticipation all rolled into one. It was hard to believe that this moment, the moment he had been dreaming of for years, was finally here. Maya had agreed to let him meet her son. It had taken time. More. Time than Alex had hoped for, but now, standing outside the door, he was ready. At least he hoped he was. The thought of meeting his son, a child who had lived his life without him, felt like an impossible weight to carry. The door opened slowly, and there he was. The boy. Alex's heart skipped a beat. He was smaller than Alex had imagined, maybe around 10 or 11 years old, with a face that was a perfect blend of Maya's and his own. His eyes were dark, just like Alex's, and his hair fell in that same unruly way that Alex's always had. But it wasn't just the features that stood out. It was the way he looked at Alex, curious, yet cautious. "Hi," the boy said, his voice polite, but hesitant. He looked up at Alex with those familiar eyes, waiting for him to speak. Alex's throat tightened. He didn't know how to begin. There were so many things he wanted to say, but the words wouldn't come. He took a deep breath, trying to calm his racing heart. "Hey there," Alex finally said, his voice coming out a little hoarse. "How's it going?" The boy shrugged, a small smile tugging at the corner of his lips. "Good. Just been playing soccer with some friends." Alex couldn't help but smile. It felt so natural, talking to the boy about something as simple as soccer. It was a moment that, for a brief second, made the years of absence disappear. He found himself asking about the game, how often he played, what position he liked best. The boy responded, sharing small details, talking about the matches, the scores, and the friends he played with. It was easy, comfortable, but there was still a heavy silence between them. Alex didn't know how to bridge the gap, the huge gap that separated him from this child. The boy didn't know who Alex was. He didn't know that the man standing in front of him was his father. For a few minutes, they talked, bonding over soccer and small things. Alex watched the boy, noticing the way he smiled when he talked about his favorite players, the way his eyes lit up when he described a great goal he had scored. It was the same spark Alex had seen in his own reflection as a child. It was a feeling of connection that felt both familiar and foreign at the same time. But despite the small moments they shared, Alex couldn't shake the feeling that there was something missing. He hadn't yet told the boy who he was. He wasn't sure if it was the right moment. He didn't want to overwhelm him or make him feel confused or scared. Just as Alex was about to say something, Maya walked into the room. She paused when she saw the two of them together, her expression unreadable. She had been standing by the door, watching them interact for a few minutes now. Her face softened just slightly, but Alex could see the worry in her eyes. She had been through so much, and now she was letting him into their world. The boy looked up at his mother, sensing the change in the air. He tilted his head slightly, his gaze shifting between Maya and Alex. Maya took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to say what she had been holding back for so long. "This is your father," she said softly, her voice barely above a whisper. The words hung in the air, heavy and thick. Alex could see the boy's face change in an instant. His eyes widened in disbelief, his lips parted as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't find the words. For a moment, everything went still. Alex felt a wave of panic wash over him. The boy wasn't ready for this. He wasn't ready for the truth. But it was too late. Maya had told him. Now everything would change. The boy blinked several times, his mind racing. He looked at Maya, then back at Alex. His face was a mixture of shock, confusion, and something else, something Alex couldn't quite place. The boy opened his mouth but closed it again, not sure what to say. "Are you really my dad?" the boy finally asked, his voice small, uncertain, Alex's heart twisted in his chest. The boy's question was simple, but it hit him like 1,000 bricks. He had never imagined that it would be this hard, this difficult to answer. The boy wasn't just asking for the truth. He was asking for something more. He was asking for a connection, for something that had been missing from his life for so long. "Yes," Alex said, his voice breaking. "I'm your father." The boy stood there, motionless for a moment, processing the information. Then, without saying another word, he looked down at the floor, his shoulders slumping just slightly. Alex could see the wheels turning in his mind, the questions piling up one after the other. "Why didn't you ever come?" the boy asked, his voice barely a whisper. Alex swallowed hard, unable to find the right words at first. "I didn't know. I didn't know how to come back. I made a mistake, and I'm sorry." I should have been there for you, and I wasn't. But I want to make things right if you'll let me." The boy looked up, his eyes filled with confusion and hurt. "Why didn't you tell me before? Why now?" "I was afraid," Alex admitted. "Afraid you wouldn't want me in your life. Afraid I would mess everything up. But I've thought about you every day. I never stopped thinking about you. I just didn't know how to find you." The boy was silent for a moment, then slowly nodded. He didn't say anything else, but Alex could see the wheels turning in his mind. Maya stepped forward, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. "It's a lot to take in," she said softly. "I know, but it's real now. This is your father." Alex watched, the boy waiting for any sign or reaction. It wasn't perfect. Nothing about this moment was perfect, but it was real. And for the first time, Alex felt like he had a chance to be a part of something that mattered. It wasn't the grand reunion he had imagined. It wasn't easy and it wasn't quick, but it was a start, a beginning, and that was all he needed. It wasn't perfect, but it was real, and it was the start of something new.